Oh, wait. Yep. There we go. Can you see that now too? Can you see the full screen version of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will go ahead and so hi everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I know that it's been a really busy time for anyone who's involved with schools in any way, shape, or form. So we appreciate you being here. We're also recording this, so if you feel like you've missed anything, we will definitely post the links on our various websites throughout the district. But my name is Erin Schulte. I'm the coordinator of counseling and character education for Parkway. With us tonight, we have Adrienne Atkinson. She's the care coordinator at Central Middle School. We have our presenter, Brian Kuhn, who is the coordinator of the student wellness program at Caring Counseling. And I've had the pleasure of working with him for, gosh, I feel like it's been maybe even 2 years or so now, Brian, that we've been kind of planning and things. So
18 months.
Yeah.
18 months. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Jason Rooks, you see his lovely face on here as well. He's helping us run the technology for the webinar. So thank you for that, Jason. For you all parents here, I am going to right now launch a poll that will kind of help us as we go. It's just one question. So if you wouldn't mind answering it. What school level is your child or your children? And we'll give you a couple more seconds to respond. Looks like most of you are. Brian, can you see it? Or
Yes, I can. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they should be able to mark, if you have multiple kids, you can mark multiple, right? I believe that was true. Yeah.
I think that's true. Yes. So we'll give everybody about 10 more seconds to go ahead and respond if you haven't yet. Looks like a lot of elementary and middle, and actually kind of a good mixture of all three here. So wonderful.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. Is that good, Brian? Do you have the information?
Yeah, that gives me a good sense. I will try to avoid the word teenager a lot, as we don't have all teenagers, but as both Adrienne and Erin know, and some of you who are on this call, I love working with teenagers, but I also love working with kids of all ages. So this is great. Thank you.
Sure. Just for the audience, I went ahead and shared the results. We had 60% elementary, 40% middle school, and 31% high school. So there it is. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Brian, because that's who everyone came to see tonight. So we have 1 hour. Another thing, parents, if you have a question, there is a Q&A. If you hover toward the bottom of your screen, you should see Q&A. You can submit questions at any point in time. We're probably going to save the bulk of those for the end of the presentation. But if we need to clarify something as Brian's talking, we'll go ahead and do that. So feel free to use that Q&A function. You just type in your question and we'll get to it at the end. All right, Brian, all you.
Great. Thank you, Erin. And thank you, Adrienne. And thank you, Jason, for making this happen and for inviting me to just to spend a little time with everybody this evening as we are moving into this new school year and into a new program that I have been really excited about and lucky to find Parkway as an amazing partner for this student wellness program, which we will talk about at the end. But I thought we would first jump into just some things we want to be keeping in mind as parents, as our children, our students go back to school. I think we put in the description, right? Part of what I think was on all of our minds is, a year ago, we would have said, oh, can we please send our kids back to school, period. Well, we got to do that last year, but then we started thinking, oh, can we please send our kids back to school and not think about COVID at all? And that didn't quite work out as much as we hoped, but our kids they're in the building, which is great, and school is happening, which is great. So we just thought this would be a great time to do a little refresher, a little mental wellness 101, not just for our young people in our lives, but also for us as parents and adults in the lives of young people, just to dip our toe into this a bit. I was telling Erin as we were waiting for everybody to log on, I think everything we'll talk about tonight, I could probably talk, I don't know, for about 5 or 6 hours on each topic. And yet tonight we're going to jam them all into 1 hour. And so it may feel a little speedy, but I hope it leaves you with a little bit of feeling of wanting to know more, or at least just sparks an idea on you, or for you or your family, or it sparks a question in your mind that you want to find an answer to. And I would be happy to help you find that answer, as I'm sure Erin would, and Adrian would, and some other really great people who work for Parkway and really believe in mental wellness and mental health for our young people. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in. And I'm using the term mental wellness for a reason, right? Because we know mental health, and we all appreciate and really understand, I hope, or try to understand mental health is. I'm using the word mental wellness because I see mental wellness as more of a preventative more preventative measure in how then we can address our mental health, right? So if the definition for mental wellness is being mentally well, right? Maybe that your mind is in order and functioning in your best interest, so you can think, feel, and act in ways that create positive impact on your physical and social well-being, right? So what are the things that we're trying to do for ourselves as parents and instill in the lives of our children that makes these things happen? Mental wellness and being a good, being excelling at our mental wellness does not mean, right, that other mental distress won't happen, right? It doesn't mean we won't have moments of severe anxiety or depression. It doesn't mean that moments won't happen that will cause great trauma in our lives or the lives of our young people. We're not saying these things are going to stop those moments from happening, but what we're hoping is that good mental wellness, it can reduce the effects of some mental distress, right? It can make us a little more resilient, better positioned to deal with what may be happening in our lives, right? So it gives us a better way to handle these events when they occur. And you're going to hear me say this a lot, being more confident in asking for help when we have mental distress, right? Part of our mental wellness is understanding that we cannot handle all these things on our own for ourselves, and we can't handle all these things on our own for our children either, right? That when we are really taking care of ourselves, we are aware of the fact that we need to ask for help. So we're going to just dive into, again, really briefly, we're going to just skim the surface. I hope I don't leave you just with lots of questions, but if I do leave you with lots of questions, hopefully there are questions that are just going to really inspire you to seek out the answers. So for me, 4 important aspects of mental wellness for ourselves and our children, right? Are always, right? These 4 things we're going to talk about are always pertain to us, but especially in this time of COVID. Okay. So we're going to talk about a little understanding. We're going to talk about some communication. We're going to talk about problem solving, and we're going to talk about the student wellness program, not just what it is, but why check-ins, mental health check-ins are so important for all of us, but especially for our young people, right? Especially for the young people in our lives. So first we have to start with, and some of you know who are out there who know me, know that I'm a big brain nerd. I love the brain. I think the more we understand about the way the brain works, then the more we understand about who we are as people. And for us as parents, understanding what's happening inside the heads of our children could not be more important from my perspective, right? Because those are some of the biggest disconnects that we have as parents trying to understand children, is that we think our brains are functioning the same way their brains are functioning. And the flip side is true as well. Our kids think their brains are functioning the same way ours function. And that in and of itself causes a disconnect and lots of misunderstanding, right? So whether your child is still a kid, right, still maybe kind of between 5 and 9, or they're in that pre-adolescent stage, which tends to be from 9, 10 to 12-ish, that seems to be getting shorter, right? Shorter and shorter, that period of time, or whether they're in the adolescent stage, which is pretty much the onset of puberty, the onset of the physical changes in the body, until about the age until mid 20s, right? We know adolescence does not end at 18, and it does not end at 21. It usually, the brain finishes its development process or usually in the mid 20s. And so understanding that it's a very large chunk of time that our kids are going through this huge transition of their understanding of self, their understanding of the world, their understanding of other people, how they fit into that, right? What their brain tells them about certain experiences can change from moment to moment based on where the brain is in its development. And so as we are thinking about the mental wellness of our young people, we have to understand that this is a big part of what's going on with them as they're growing up, is that the way their brain functions, how it talks to itself, the messages it creates are not only dependent on where it is in the developmental stage of the brain, but also understood differently than possibly how the adult brain would understand those things. And again, that is often where adults and young people find themselves in pretty big miscommunication moments, right? So three things to be thinking of, to keep in mind as we're thinking about brain development and mental wellness. Again, the adolescent brain especially, right, is very emotionally driven. And those of you who have teenagers, middle schoolers, high schoolers, and maybe even late elementary school kids in your house, you've probably experienced this. And guess what? You're going to get to continue to experience it for a while, of a very emotionally driven person in your life. And part of that is because the emotional part of our brain develops and matures before the logic and reasoning part of our brain. And so we have young people who are going around and really taking information through emotion first, and through logic and reasoning second, which is very different than the adult brain, right? The adult brain functions kind of this prefrontal cortex part of our brain is what is what's leading the way for us, so to speak. Whereas for our young people, it's back here in this emotional center, because this part of the brain develops faster and sooner than this part of the brain. And so as we think about our young people, we have to remember that they are experiencing a very emotionally driven life. They are perceiving the world through emotions first. The feelings that they're feeling are maybe feelings in general, are feelings they've never had before, or at least they're experiencing them on a level that they've never experienced them before, right? Because our children are the children in our lives. Actually, you get to be about 7 or 8 and your brain is pretty balanced, right? Because that first part of brain development has kind of stopped and gotten to a point of some balance, where their emotional part and their logic and reasoning part kind of, are pretty good at evening themselves out, which we've all experienced in our houses sometimes, right? Where it seems like the 9-year-old is a little more mature than the 14-year-old. And part of that is because the 9-year-old's understanding and how the brain is taking in information is a little more synced up. Whereas then adolescence starts and it gets a little out of balance again. So we want to remember that that's going on. And when our young people feel really big things or experience really big things on an emotional level, we want to be paying attention to that, because those are really important moments for them. And we don't want to just shoo them out of the way and tell them they should think something different, right? Because that is their reality, right? That is their understanding. And so through that lens, we then have a better sense of, why certain moments are more challenging for them, right? Why there is a greater desire to do, I just dropped my headphone. sorry about that, why there is a greater desire for things like self-harm and even suicidal ideation, because those are all very emotional responses to what's happening inside of their head. So understanding that, I think, is one of the key things that I love to teach parents, because I think it can change the way you parent, it can change the way you understand your child, and personally, it helps me not take things so personally. That when my teenager, gets angry with me or tells me I'm just, oh, stupid dad, you're just, right? I have to understand that's coming from an emotional place. He doesn't really believe that. And it's opening the door for some good conversation, right? Because, and we'll get to that in a little bit in communication, that then we also have to remember we are key in them building that logic and reasoning and understanding those wonderful pathways. And the adults in the lives of young people play such a key role in that. We need to make sure we're positioning ourselves where they let us in, so that then we can do that. But we'll talk more about that when we get to communication. The brain, yeah, please.
Sorry,
Erin.
we did have a question in the chat that I think would be good for you to go back to quickly. And they said, how is mental health different from mental wellness? Maybe if you can just give a quick recap.
Oh, yeah. I think of mental wellness as preventative measures, what we do to try to be as mentally well as possible, right? Things that we integrate into our lives, knowledge, ways of going about taking care of ourselves, taking care of other people, right? Some people find it through physical activity. Some people find it through great meditation or yoga or other things, investing time into areas of life that are really important to you and that give you life, right? All of those things are preventative measures, or give us a stronger sense of self and position ourselves to then approach our mental health in a more complete way, and in a way that hopefully becomes more approachable to us, and maybe can help us better see where we are lacking and where we need help, and how we can go about that help. Do you think that clarifies it a little bit? Yeah. Okay. And you can ask Adrienne about stuff like that too. She's amazing at things like this. She's got a really great perspective on all that. The other thing, another brain thing, and see, I'm doing it already, Erin. I'll get going on the brain and I'll talk forever. So I'm going to speed through this a little bit. But we have to remember that a developing brain it lacks perspective, right? We have to remember that the developing brain, I'm going to say it again because it's so important. The developing brain lacks perspective, right? When something happens for the first time, it is the first time they've ever experienced that, and they don't know like what the other side of that is, right? So when teenagers, for example, feel this tremendous heartbreak after a breakup, they don't have any perspective of what it's like to recover from that, or to not feel that pain anymore, right? So when we are tending to the mental health, the mental wellness, well, through our mental wellness, but to the mental health of our young people, we have to remember that there are very specific perspective understandings that they are trying to make sense of. And again, you couple that with a high emotion, and it feels like, oh, their world is crumbling around them, and because they don't have any sense of the fact that these things stop, right? Or that this feeling subsides, or that they are or will be okay after this happens. We see this a lot in adolescence, but this also happens in childhood, right? This also happens with our children. And again, it's just remembering that a developing brain lacks perspective. It doesn't have the experience that the adult brain does. And I think sometimes we as adults, we forget. We get so up here in this part of our brain, I think we forget a lot of times what it was like to experience those things growing up, or to know something for the first time growing up. And again, and I've said it already, and we won't take too much, that it's in the process of developing, right? So sometimes we are feeling like we're trying to play catch up with our kids, right, as their brains are developing, as they're growing, that we're like, oh wait, you liked this 10 seconds ago and now you don't like this anymore, right? But we have to remember that what's happening in their head is constantly changing, and you may have experienced what seems like an overnight change, right? Well, the brain does a lot of its developing while our young people are sleeping, and so it can feel like it's an overnight change because the brain is literally changing while our young people are sleeping. And so remembering that just because something is figured out and kind of feels really good now, you know, we have to keep checking in. We have to keep checking in because so much can be changing so fast in their world, that just because it was good 6 months ago doesn't mean it's good right now. All right, just because I could handle this thing that happened to me a year ago doesn't mean I can handle this other thing that seems very similar to us, right? To adults, doesn't mean I'm going to be able to handle that in the same way. Okay, so we're emotionally driven. We don't have perspective. Right, our developing brains don't have perspective, and they're developing, so they're changing. So what does it need? Right, what do we want to keep in mind is how we need to for good mental wellness. What do we need? What does the developing brain needs? It needs to be understood as an emotionally driven organ, right? I'm specifically talking about the brain, but I'm generally speaking as to our young people in our lives, right? I think we have to remember that they are an emotionally driven organ first, especially our adolescents, right? Again, like I said, it's a little different in childhood, especially late childhood, because the brain's pretty balanced at that point. But when it starts to develop and shift into that adolescent brain, man, those emotions can kick in pretty quickly, and the brain can feel really out of balance, out of sync, in their heads, let alone what we experience with them. Adults often miss this. Again, we rely on this logic and reasoning prefrontal cortex part of our head a lot. And we kind of will even tend to poo-poo the things that happen back here in our emotional center. But our young people, man, they are thriving. This thing is pounding. It's generating lots of heat, and we have to remember that. So that means we have to be willing to meet them in their emotion, right? So part of mental wellness, I think, for adults to be sharing with young people is showing them I'm willing to turn this off and meet you where you are, right? I may not fully understand it. I may think it's a little silly, right? I may, but unless I meet you where you are and turn this off and try to find that emotion to meet you in, man, you won't let me in, right? Right? We hear our young people say, "Oh, you just don't get me. Oh, why don't you get me? You just don't get it." And you know what? Most of the time they're right. They're right. We don't. We're not doing our part to get it. And our part to get it is sometimes turning this part of our brain off, trying to really tap into what it is the emotions are doing and meeting our young people there. Then if we do that, then we get the opportunity to help build, not to get too neuroscience-y on you, but build those neural pathways and build those synapses and all the cool things that's happening up there. We get to help make that happen, right? We get to help teach them. We get to help give them perspective. We get to help them tap into this part of their head a little bit better, and all of that. But if they don't let us in, then we don't get the opportunity to do that. So we have to be willing to do, right, to meet them in that emotion. And again, just a kind of a quick reminder that they believe everyone experiences emotion the way that they do, right? So when you don't get it, it's like shocking. They're like, "Whoa, wait, how do you not feel what I'm feeling? How do you not?" But again, because they lack perspective, right? So all they know is what they know, and so they come with a real belief that everybody should see and feel and understand the world the way that they do, right? It's a very self-centered thing. You all have heard that a lot, again, especially about adolescence. It happens in childhood too, right? That the world is just about me, and what my perspective is the perspective on the world. And we get to help teach our young people that, right? We get to help communicate a change in that. But they often default to that sense of we need to, or everybody understands this the way that I understand it. And so again, meeting them in that space and then helping them broaden their vision, right, is a great is a great mental wellness tool, because then it helps them when they're struggling, have a better sense of like, oh, this is different. Oh, I'm actually experiencing something that may not be good because other people aren't experiencing that. It helps them build empathy towards other people, right? Your experience might be really difficult, even though my experience is not so difficult. It does lots of great things. And then the developing brain needs stimulation. And I think we've all lived through that, right, together over the past year. And we've seen some of the side effects when our young people don't get the brain stimulation that they need. They need stimulation from their peers. They need stimulation from adults. We often are really engaged with our, right, and I'm sure our teacher friends will speak to this, right? Parents get really engaged in elementary school, and their kids are like, hey, are you coming to this? Are you coming to this? And then they get to middle school, and it's like, where'd all the adults go, right? and so, but it's our job to remind our children that adults need to be around their lives. We need adults in our lives as we're growing and developing, and adults other than the adults that we who live in our household, right? It's important for children and young people to be exposed to adults outside of the house, right? To make relationships with them, and to allow some of those adults, right, to do some of this great brain building with them, who are more than just the people that they live with. School, of course, physical activity. We want to I really want you all to hear this, right? I think sometimes we forget about physical activity and mental wellness, that how we take care of the rest of our body affects what's happening in here, and we can't forget this. This is one united system, right? Every little part has an effect on the other. Just as, if someone breaks their arm and can't do right, they can't do painting or art that they really like, that can lead to some depressive moments, right? Because that pain and that taking something away can affect the brain, and vice versa, right? Things that are happening in here that I'm not feeling really good about myself, or I'm feeling less confident in who I am, or what I look like, or how other people see me, right? That sometimes physical activity and moving the rest of our body helps that perspective change up here, that I do feel a little more confident in who I am and what I do. So the brain needs physical activity. Then the brain needs a feeling of belonging, right? Nothing new to any of us who've all gone through adolescence, especially in childhood as well, right? We want to have our group. And so that's why we do worry about young people and children when they become isolated. That was one of the big concerns about last year, right? Is that are they not able to find their space to feel like they belong to something outside of their home, which is great and important, and not to disparage that in any way. But as the brain is developing and as we're trying to be aware of the mental wellness of our young people, we know that sense of belonging is really important. And finally, introspection, right? That we need to continue to talk to, and this is going to lead right into our communication piece of how we look inside, how we start to understand what's really going on in ourselves, right? What an amazing mental wellness gift when we can feel more confident of saying, oh, yeah, I'm really struggling. I may not really know why, but I just know something's not right, right? And so helping our young people and our children start to have the words for the emotions that they're feeling, for the consequences of their actions, for how they wish they could do something different or better, is all really important. So that inward, right, the brain needs to learn how to kind of come in and see itself in more of a critical sort of way. And in doing so, then oftentimes I think opens up the door for other great resources, right, and strengthens its ability to understand who the child's ability to understand who they are and how they affect the world and how the world affects them. How are we doing on questions, Erin? We okay?
Yeah, we have one, but I think it could be good for the end.
Okay, great. All right. So then we move. So we got some understanding of who our young people are, who our children, and who our adolescents are. Then communication, right? It is talking. It is sharing. This, I cannot stress this enough in terms of mental wellness, right? The more our young people feel comfortable in sharing their experience, the more they feel like they can honestly divulge questions that they have, that the more that they experience that these feelings that they might be feeling may be difficult and unique, but are also feelings that other people have felt before, right? They're not the only one who has ever felt this way. The more they experience adults in their lives who can talk about with difficult things, right, the better they're going to long-term be. The more they're going to be able to, again, identify some of the struggles in their life and feel comfortable in reaching out for help for that. So just a few things, just a quick list, just to I'll just tick down these and speak to them really briefly. Yes, it can feel daunting to talk to our children, especially to our adolescent children. They can act like they don't want to talk to us. And in some ways they don't. In other ways, they actually really do. And so don't let and that's a way of saying, don't let the dauntingness, I don't even know if that's a real world word, but it is now, discourage you from communicating with your child, right? In some ways, it's a trial and error, right? You have to continue to seek the ways in which you can engage your child in the communication, right? So maybe it is in your house, maybe it is sitting down over a meal together and having a great family conversation. But maybe maybe that works when your kids are, 8, 9, and 10. But then all of a sudden, someone gets really quiet at the dinner table. Okay, well, now they're 12, 11, 12, 13, 14. And some of that same communication that used to happen at the dinner table is not happening anymore. Okay, well, how do I re-engage with my child in that, right? What are the things that I can come up with to try to talk to them in a different way, right? Maybe they're feeling more like one-on-one conversations are better, right? Or maybe if they have siblings, maybe some of the things that they want to share or talk about, they're not quite sure how their siblings will react to it. So we want to be, offer some more private space or whatever. That's just to say it's work. It is work. And it can be kind of one of those things that you feel like you're kind of constantly working at, but it's worth it, right? It's worth it. The second thing I'll say is create a space for sharing the positive as well as the negative. We can model this, right, for our children, that life is not always sunshine and rainbows, right? And if we only always share the good things, then what our young people learn is that the bad stuff is just shoved in and kept inside. And so if we can model as the adults in their lives that we can talk about both the good and the bad, both the difficult and the easy, right? The things we have answers to and the things that we don't. It's a great modeling of mental wellness, of the reality of what life is, and that life is sometimes ups and downs. Life is not always good and easy, and if our young people come to expect that, then that causes problems in and of itself, right, as they get older, because they will learn at some point that life is not always easy. But what they then haven't learned is how to express that, right? What are the words for that? Who are the people that I can share that with? How do I find help with that? All of that. So sharing, creating space where they see and hear both positives and negatives being shared. Show your child that you can talk about difficult things. And sometimes that's us leading the way, right? Especially our adolescents, because they're because of the one of the reasons is because the emotionally driven brain, right? They are very aware of the emotions that go along with what it is that they're experiencing. And sometimes they don't want to put those feelings onto you. They love you too much. I can't burden my parent with this. I don't want anybody to feel the way I'm feeling, so I'm just going to keep it inside, right? But the more that we show them that we can and want to have the difficult conversations, that we can handle the difficult conversations, that you can tell me as your dad that you're really struggling with who you are as a person, or you're really struggling with things like drugs or alcohol, or you've had thoughts of suicide, and that I can sit and just be with you and not freak out, right? And again, kind of model that behavior of we're going to figure this out together. Man, that goes a long way. And some of those seeds are really planted when we start difficult conversations with our young people, right? Whether it's about sex or drugs or alcohol, or even politics in these days, right? Even what we experience in the world. Hey, I can talk about this, and we can talk about it in calm ways, right? I can hear your perspective, and if your perspective is different than mine, that's fine. I don't have to convince you of anything. I'm just glad we're talking about it, right? The more we open those doors for our young people, then the more that the doors seem accessible to them when they're really in a place of struggling, right? Where things are maybe getting to the point of trying to of mental health distress, and we're looking for some help. Encourage communication with other trusted adults. Talked about this already in the brain thing, right? Again, sometimes it's really hard to tell our parents things that we're struggling with, or that we're not feeling good about ourselves, or maybe part of our struggle is with our parents. Or at many different stages of life that can happen, right? So especially with our children, with our younger kids, if we again start that habit of having other adults present in their life that we trust, of course, as their parent or guardian, as their family, but also they come to trust as solid adults in their lives who they can talk to, who may be easier to share some things, some difficult things with, that then at least they're talking to somebody who can help them, right? And not what ends up happening, especially in adolescence, where they're just talking to their peers, and their peers are trying to problem solve something that they really don't have the ability, right, or the wherewithal to problem solve on their own. Share your own mental wellness in appropriate ways, right? There is a line here, right? We will always want to be aware of not putting responsibility for our mental health, for our mental wellness on our children. It is not their job to keep us mentally healthy or mentally well. But it is okay to talk to them about it, and talk to them about how you care for yourself, and what are things you struggle with, right? If you're having a bad day, is there a way to say, oh gosh, I am just grumpy today, and I am sorry that I snapped at you, and I should not have done that, right? I mean, that in and of itself is sharing mental wellness. I wasn't in a great mental place today. You don't necessarily have to always get into the why, what's going on, but again, modeling that, hey, we as adults have ups and downs too. We as adults don't always get it right either. We as adults have things that we really struggle with. So we understand that. So when you come talk to me, you're talking to somebody who at least has experienced some of that themselves. But two, that it gives them that sense of, oh, this is something that mom or dad or grandma or uncle or aunt or whomever is working on too, right? So it's okay that I have to work on it myself, right? Because look, she's working on it and trying to be better and trying to get better or take care of herself in a better way. So of course, it's okay that I have to do that as well. And then the last one is dig, and that is again, especially with our adolescents, um, sometimes they like to give you fine. I'm fine. How you doing? Fine. Yeah, but how are you doing? I'm fine. Right. And again, in some ways it's developmentally appropriate. They're trying to figure out, what do I figure out on my own? What do I need help with? But I will remind you that you probably know your child better than anybody else. And if there is something inside of you that's going, wait, something's not right, don't feel bad about digging a little bit, right? And just trying to come at it with a different approach, not giving up, or respecting, like, okay, you don't want to talk right now, but coming back to it. And another, hey, I know you weren't in a good space to talk, an hour ago, but I wanted to check in with you again because this and this is happening, and it just makes me go, oh wait, I got to pay attention to this, right? Or it makes me worried that something's not right, or that you're not feeling great, or whatever it might be, right? um, be willing to do that. And I know we always feel like, as parents, again, even from the moment our children, I think, become self-mobile, is how much do we let them do on their own, and how much do we interject ourselves into that? And I would say, when it comes to our mental wellness and our mental health, um, it's probably a place to not feel bad about interjecting yourself in, because their capacity to deal with some of these things on their own is often very limited. And so they also may not have words, right? Especially our younger adolescents or our older children, they start to feel things that they don't have words for. They don't know what this feeling is. They've never had it before, so they don't know what the words are to describe it. So you need to stay with them and maybe dig a little bit to get for you to get a better understanding of what's going on, so that you can help, right? You can help them articulate what's happening inside of them. You doing all right there, Erin? Okay. All right. Our last little thing before we get into the student wellness, problem solving, and this is another big one for me. A great mental wellness activity is helping our young people learn how to do problem solving, right? There's a temptation as parents to solve problems for our children, and that is something that is societal. As a society, I think we have leaned into more and more and more and more and more over the past X amount of years. When we problem solve for our children instead of with our children, what can end up happening is they start to feel ill-equipped, right? That they don't have the capacity to solve these problems, right? I am being shielded so that from the problems because I can't handle them, right? And yes, there is a role and a place, right, for all of that. There are certain things that, of course, you wouldn't include your 5-year-old in terms of trying to figure something out, right? Whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's a school issue, it's a family issue, right? Or something else, maybe it's a community issue, that you would engage a 5-year-old different than a 15-year-old. But when our children experience us constantly knocking problems out of the way for them, right, constantly figuring things out for them or doing things for them, there's that sense of ill-equippedness, right? And so then when other problems start to arise, they start to feel like, oh, I can't handle this. I'm not prepared for this. I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this anxiety that I'm feeling. I can't deal with the stress of school or friends or what's going on at home. and then that then affects their resilience, right? I've said it a number of times already, and it's important to say again, right? Life is full of ups and downs. There will be downs. We want to make sure we're positioning our kids to be in the best place that they can be to handle the down moments, whatever that they are, right? And if they experience, and from a mental wellness standpoint, right, kind of from a preventative standpoint, if they experience the process of handling problems, articulating problems, right, talking things out, working together to find solutions, that all builds resilience, right, for when down moments come, because they feel like they have tools to handle those moments, as opposed to that moment coming and they're looking around going, oh, now what do I do? I have no idea what to do. And then that leads into that last part of then what happens when they have a problem that they cannot fix, right? If problems have always been solved for them, well, the problem they can't fix comes a lot easier than if they've been engaged in the process of addressing problems through their growing up. We all run into problems we can't fix on our own. And so hopefully, through that process, they're learning, oh, this is what you do when you run into a problem that you cannot fix yourself, as opposed to being left to, running into a problem they can't fix themselves and then not knowing what to do next. So some problem solving things to think about how you share this with your children and encourage this in your children. Yeah, how do you teach them how to relax, right? We have become a very now driven society. Our young people are growing up, our children are growing up in kind of a very instant gratification, instant answer sort of way of living. And so it can be if they run into a problem and the immediate fix, right, or immediate solution to the problem isn't evident to them, right, the anxiety can raise really quick, right? The self-doubt can kick in really quick. And so how do we talk to our children about how we relax, how we slow down, how we walk away from a problem to maybe gain better perspective of what's going on, right? And some of this may be the ways we take care of our body, right? Well, again, whether it's through breathing or walking or meditation or exercise or whatever it might be, how do we allow ourselves to relax in a moment of anxiety or a moment of problem solving in order to better find the solution or discover what the solution might be? Another thing to remember is don't feel like you must produce the immediate answer. Again, related to this, right? That we are some of it's out of our control. We have just become a society of immediate answers, and our kids sometimes bring us problems and we're like, oh, here's the fix, right? Where sometimes problems don't need immediate fixes. Sometimes we just need to sit in the problem for a little bit, or we need to say, I don't know, what do you think we should do? Right. Again, in an age appropriate way. And it's different, how you go about doing that is different for a 5-year-old as it is for a 9-year-old, as it is for a 15-year-old, and it is for an 18-year-old. But in having that become a part of what you're trying to instill, some of the mental wellness skills you're trying to instill in your child, I think can be really important. And then work together to discover solutions, and include bringing in others to help, right? I think that, again, is a key part in helping teach our young people and our children how to problem solve, is that sometimes there are problems in our lives that we cannot fix on our own, period. And our mental health is often one of those things. And when we are in a place where something's not working right, we're not feeling good about ourselves, we're doing things that are harmful to ourselves or harmful to others, right? It's a time that we reach out to somebody else to help us. And can we help our children start to learn that at an earlier age of, yeah, sometimes we need help, and we reach out to somebody and we ask them for help, and then that then becomes a part of how we think of our mental wellness and becomes part of how we think of our mental health. A quick story or just kind of anecdote to this that I think is important for us to remember. This part of it is a little bit more of a, well, not maybe all of it is more of a recent phenomenon in the span of human history, but what instant information has done, right, whether it be on our mobile devices or our computers or whatever, is it in some ways has tricked us into thinking we don't need other people the way we used to, right? In the 1980s, if I were to have a problem and my mom or dad couldn't help me fix it, one of their solutions would be, well, let's call your uncle and see if he knows, right? Or let's call so-and-so down the street and see if she knows how to do this, right? And it was this immediate connection to another person for help, where now what our young people have learned and started, right, gotten into, and we do it too, right? We model it for them, is, well, I don't know, let's see what the old phone has to say about that. And it's cutting out that interpersonal connection to problem solving that I think is really important to the development of our children and our adolescents. The last one. I'm just going to reiterate this, and it's okay to ask for help, right? I think that is a huge message we just need, right, to embed in ourselves and embed in our children, that it's okay to ask for help. Here's how we ask for help when we need help. Here are safe people we can go to when we need to ask for help, and encouraging that for them. Teaching them preemptively so that when a mental health crisis arises, they already feel that security in themselves to know, oh, this is something I might need to ask Adrian about, right? Or this is something I might need to ask my mom to try to find a counselor for me to talk to. Or this is at least something I have no idea what's going on, but I know it's bigger than me, right? And so I feel confident in asking for help with that. Anything we want to address before I kind of just give a real brief overview of this program that Caring Counseling and Parkway, and specifically Erin and I and others like Adrian in the district have been working on for the past year, and we're really excited that we're going to get to offer it to you this year.
I'm not sure if you want to, there's one question in the chat, the other I sent a message to, so hopefully got that, but the one in the chat is, one thing on my mind tonight is, should I sign my children up for indoor / fall / winter sports for their physical and mental health during the pandemic? Is the risk of catching COVID greater than the health benefit? We do outdoor sports, but aren't sure about indoor, particularly if they won't be masked. I don't know if you have thoughts about that. My own immediate thought was that's probably a family decision and how important those sports are to your students, and how much of the joy those sports in particular bring them. But Brian, I don't know if you have another thought. I mean, there's a lot of things to weigh in that, I think.
Yeah, I think you're exactly 100% right. There's a lot to weigh there. You do ultimately have to make a decision that's best for your family as a whole, and the kids specifically. And you're right, you're weighing two really tough things. What's the mental health benefit slash what's the physical medical risk, and the one thing I would offer is, and I'm probably not going to give you the answer that you want, because I'm not going to say yes or no to either of those things. I'm a therapist by trade, so I'm really good at that. If you feel like it's not something that is safe for your kids, for your family to do, don't just stop there, right? My encouragement would be, make sure you try to find something to fill that void in some way. And it may not be exactly what they love and exactly what they want to do. It may not be the perfect, right, solution or stand-in. But but don't just leave the void, right? And I think that's where we were a year ago. We didn't know what could fill the void, right? Or what was safe. And I think we have a better sense now of, okay, we're not ready for that. But we don't need to be over here with nothing. What we got to explore the middle a little bit more, and how do we continue to do that, and what are things that we can look to do that.
That's good. And then Brian, the only other thing I want to add, the other question that I answered privately was, a bit about some things with physical health and some anxiety and kind of some of the things we're experiencing. And I think in particular for our high school students, they are now going to school much earlier. Were all last year. And so my one thing I was going to say to that question, or the thought about our physical health, the one thing I was going to add is, like, don't underestimate the importance of your child getting some sleep.
Yes.
A lot of times with those things like anxiety, like depression, and not that this is a cure-all, but it is something we generally notice if a student's experiencing some severe anxiety, some severe depression. Sleep can be one. If we can figure out how to wrangle their sleep and how to get them in bed at a normal time without their device near them, with it being dark and cool in the room, and they can get some actual quality sleep. Sometimes the anxiety hinders that, but that is a really powerful physical thing that can help with all these the mental health as well.
Thank you so much for saying that. And like I mentioned at the beginning, the sleep is when the brain does all its good development work, right? So that in and of itself speaks to the need for it. Not to mention, it makes them better students. It makes them just better people to be around, right? And everything that Erin said. The other thing I would add to that is diet. That we make sure we're eating well. And that we're drinking water, and we're doing some of those things. Again, this is all interconnected, right? We know enough about the body and the brain and how everything is tied together. And so mental wellness is about taking care of our physical needs, whether it's sleep, eating, the things we put in our body, et cetera.
Yeah, and I would presence there too. Just those are natural things, right? And children need natural things. And devices, devices are wonderful, with discipline and everything, but I don't know that they're natural, right? So like really just trying to remember all those things you just listed, Brian, are natural things that we need, right, as children. So and adults, but Yep, for sure. And they all go to brain development. Right. They all play into brain development. And we need, again, remembering that this is a brain in transition and in constant development. And it's a long period of time. It's a really long period of time in our lives, that adolescent stage.
Great. We have a couple questions in here, but I don't know if you want to quickly run through the student wellness program, and then we can hop back to the question, just so we make sure we get to that for people who have to go.
For sure. And I'll preface this by saying more on this is coming to you. Be on the lookout for it. Erin and the amazing folks at the district are putting together some really great information that schools will share with you when it gets closer to the time that will be in your school. But just quickly, what the student wellness program is it's a screening program, but not just a screening program, right? We come in, we offer a very simple 10-minute questionnaire. For those of you who like stuff like this, it's based off of the pediatric symptoms checklist, which is a very well-known, respected, normed tool. And we offer to them electronically on their Chromebooks. It's completely confidential. I am the only one, I and my team, the other person I work with, are the only ones who see the immediate results of the questionnaire. But it's really good at identifying symptoms of depression, anxiety, suicidal thinking, other behavior-related issues, including attention issues, self-harming, drug and alcohol use. Those of you who are familiar with the PSC may know that there aren't specific things about drug and alcohol use, and we're really lucky that we've been able to partner with a partner in Wisconsin who's worked really closely with Lawrence University to add questions specific to suicide and suicidal ideation and self-harm and alcohol and drug use to the screeners, so that we can be kind of offering the most complete quick picture that we possibly can. Then after the students take the screener, you would hear back from us one way or the other if your child needs a follow-up, right? If they quote unquote test positive, right? If they hit markers in the screener that say, oh, this student needs some follow-up, they'd sit down and do a follow-up interview with me. It's about a 45-minute follow-up interview, and it's just following up on what the screener really what came back with the screener, and me trying to get a better sense of what's going on. Of course, looking for immediate distress or impairment to the point of immediate self-harm, immediate harm to self, immediate harm to other people, so that we can keep the student safe as possible, but then also thinking about, okay, what are good next steps, right? What it offers, what should we be offering or thinking about for this student. Then following that interview, you get a phone call from our case manager. Her name's Kathleen. She's wonderful and you love her. And what she does is really talk about what the screener showed, what came out in the interview, and our initial referral thoughts. We have a referral network of clinicians in the St. Louis area who have agreed to see people who come through this program and to see them relatively quickly. We've gathered all their information. So if you want to use specific insurance, you want to make sure they're still doing telehealth so that your child can do telehealth, whatever it might be, right? We're going to give you very focused and specific referrals, and then ask you to make those calls and talk to those people yourself and see who's a good fit for you and your child. And then we kind of stay with you until you get settled in that process. We may also recommend that we let the school know what's going on. We want to really promote a full set of resources to meet the needs of students. And of course, it would be like letting Adrian know what's going on. It wouldn't be broadcasting it to every teacher or to, even to all the administrators. But we want to try to build the sense that our mental health needs, and mental health needs of our young people, our communal needs, and how can we combat them from a community standpoint. Also, that the school may have resources that you're not even aware of, and that Adrian can say, oh, I think this would be a great resource for this child, and I want to help connect them to this resource or that resource. So we would talk to you about all of that. All of those things are all completely up to you. We don't force you to do anything. It's your information and your child's information. Again, it stays 100% confidential until you choose to release the information, and we walk you through that whole process and how we release that information. We are so excited that we're offering this to the entire 7th grade, entire 10th grade district wide. We'll be in every middle school and every high school throughout the coming year. We're gonna we're not limiting it to the 7th and 10th grade. That's kind of our target population. So you may say, oh, hey, I got like an 8th grader, could they do it? Yes, of course. Right. Or I have a 12th grader, could they do it? Yes, of course. These are just our target populations for a number of different reasons that kind of came to the surface after talking with a lot of school officials and a lot of people like Adrian and Erin and other folks who are in the district, and where they thought it would be most helpful. And then we're going to pilot this at the elementary level, at the 2nd and the 5th grade level, both as a parent report and as a student self-report in the spring. So more information to come to that'll happen later in the spring. And just a reminder, this is 100% confidential. This happens through Care and Counseling and through me. We're happy to be a partner with Parkway, and really do believe in bringing the schools into being partners in meeting the mental health needs of the students. But it's also not our information to share. It's yours and your students' information to share. And we will always honor that. And we'll want to try to talk through what the best next steps are. So I just wanted to get that on your radar as something really exciting and new that's coming. Like Dr. Marty likes to remind us, nobody else is doing this anywhere around here. So we're being really cutting edge in this, and just so excited to be able to do it in the district that my kids go to, and to be able to work initially with such great schools and such great people like Erin and Adrian to make it happen. So here's my contact information. If you have any more questions or want to ask me questions specific outside of this setting, I would more than welcome that. Just thank you all for the time. Look, only 4 minutes over. Yeah. I think that may be a record for me. So that's pretty good. I know we have questions, and so I don't want to.
Thank you. Yes, just a couple that'll be quicker. So people were asking about which grades. So Diane, hopefully that he answered your question after you asked it. And then they asked about when they would be receiving the survey. So Molly, that is going to be based on school. And we actually are working on publishing a schedule pretty soon here. It'll be on the Parkway website. But if you want to email either Brian or myself, my email is just eschulte@parkwayschools.net. We can give you the specific time. We're doing it by school, so it'll depend on which school your child goes to of when that will take place. And also just to note, it's they don't just receive the survey, it is an opt-in. So for parents, you would have to sign your child up to take this. So we're not just one day, they're not going to come home and be like, gosh, I got this survey and they asked me all these questions. You're going to know because you've signed them up that they're going to be taking it. So hopefully that helps with that. So that looks like all the questions about the student wellness program. Brian, if you have a moment, there were a couple more in the chat.
Happy to.
Someone asked, we currently have a serious illness in our extended family. Do adolescents process illness and death differently than adults?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I think so. I wouldn't say necessarily better or worse. I think differently is a good way of putting it, right? Again, oftentimes because death in adolescence is the first experience with death in adolescence, and so we do want to contextualize that that way. The other thing that we want to keep in mind is I think a lot of times either they take it very personally. Again, I don't know what life is going to be like without this person, which is true for us too, right? But we tend to we tend to put it into a little different perspective than they do. Also, I would be just aware of their of sometimes the pulling in and kind of really taking care of you, right? You have a lot going on around this. Right. You have a lot to take care of around this. I'm fine. I'm and not wanting to burden or put a burden on you and that they would see of themselves. Right. And we know that that's not true, that they're not a burden. But a lot of times that's how they can start to process moments like that. Right. Kind of high grief, high trauma, right. Sorts of moments that are affecting lots of people. Again, they're emotionally driven creatures. And so they're very tuned into how it feels. And they're like, oh, well, mom's probably feeling, or dad, or whoever is probably feeling this too. I don't want to make it worse by telling them that I'm not feeling that this is really hard on me. So I would just say check in about things like that. And again, keep the communication lines open of grief is hard and loss is hard for all of us. And we want to be able to process that together.
Thank you. And then just one more, and it is kind of it is an important thing that, we didn't touch on a ton, but the idea of, talking to your kids about when they are using substances as a coping mechanism. And I know in schools are seeing that more and more of like, I'm feeling anxious. And my way of dealing with that is to then use XYZ substance. And so, just though that it's not always a rebellious thing, or even that they're
That's
trying
right.
to be bad, but they might be using that to cope. And so thinking about, when we think about substance abuse, like even in Parkway, just one of the things we have in place is when a student is suspended for that, we hook them up with a counseling service to talk about that, in addition to other things. So kind of like interventions, sometimes in addition to punishment, but not as much of like a, hey, you can't do any, like, you can't ever see your friends anymore, XYZ, because you're doing this, using this substance, but that might actually be making it worse if they're using it because they feel lonely or because they feel isolated. So it wasn't as much of a question, as much of a, like a, point out that kids can sometimes use, and that's our Julie Knost, who's our Teen Voice for Change advocate and ambassador, pointing that out, which is very true. And we see that a lot. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that topic, Brian.
I would just add the only thing, I think that you're right on with all of that. The only thing I would add, again, from the brain perspective, I'm such a dork this way. The adolescent brain is more apt to addiction than the adult brain. Again, part of that is just in the developmental process. And so we don't want to overreact to moments like that, because we know sometimes it's not necessarily a rebellious thing. It is a coping thing, but also be aware of the fact that actually that addiction can happen easier or faster with young people than necessarily in adults. And so we're paying attention to that as well, right? Because something can spiral out of control a lot quicker than a young person may anticipate, or that we, even as the adults, would see it spinning out of control.
Yeah. Brian, thank you so much. You are just such a wonderful resource in our district, both as a parent and a mental wellness advocate and a partner now in this student wellness program. And we are just so lucky to work with you. I know Dr. Marty wanted to be here tonight as well, but had a couple of other things, but we are just so lucky and lucky to have you with us in our district and helping us out in your expertise. So just thank you so much. And I know we'll keep working together.
Yeah, looking forward to, it's going to be a great year. I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to being in so many of the great schools and meeting so many of these parents' great children. So it's going to be amazing. So thanks for having me, Erin. Thanks for being here, Adrian.
Thanks everyone who's attending. If you would like to send, if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to get Brian's email is on the screen right now. Email me. I know Adrian would be open to that as well.
Yes,
we have
for sure.
a lot of mental health resources in Parkway. We're very lucky in that way. So please don't feel like you have to handle anything by yourselves either. So thank you so much for being here, and hope you all have a great night.
Thank you.